Hello, and welcome to Badaboom. I'm Troy. On this episode of the podcast, we welcome Jordan Thomas. Jordan is the author of books such as The Man from Maybe, Weird Work, and more. Today, we talk about his recent book, Mugshots, which is now available as a trade, and the upcoming part 2 of Skin Police. Listen in, and Badaboom! Hey, Jordan, how's it going?
Hi, Troy. All good, thank you. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for coming on the show. When we reached out to you, I had no idea that you were going to be in Spain. And so the time difference really threw me off when you're like, yeah, can you do 8 p.m. my time, 11 a.m. your time? I was like, wow, that's a crazy time difference. How is it like doing comics in internationally, I guess, because I picked up Mugshots and Skin Police in the US. And I don't think people tend to really think about comics like existing outside of whatever country they live in, per se.
Yeah, so I guess it doesn't matter too much with doing the work, because obviously, like I work on the scripts, and you email those over, and you get your feedback when you get your feedback. But I have definitely noticed a trend with publishers in America getting to Friday towards the end of their day and suddenly realizing that like there's some stuff that they need me to review, or panicking about getting a description for a solicitation or something. Like I often have maybe like when I did a book called Weird Work at Image, so working with the guys at Image, and that they seem to be really focused on always sending me emails at like midnight my time on a Friday, being like, "Oh, we really need this for the solicitations." So yeah, that can occasionally catch you out where you've just gotten into bed, and suddenly someone from one of your publishers needs something, and you've got to get back up and get the laptop out again. But for the most part, working in comics is quite a nice job in terms of you can have a pretty flexible routine. But I mean, so many artists are from all throughout Europe. I mean, a lot of the biggest artists right now are all Spanish guys, Italian guys, obviously British creators as well. But yeah, it's a pretty global business at this point.
Yeah, I think when I was getting more into meeting creators and illustrators, it kind of shocked me a little bit just because I was like, man, I didn't realize so many people live in so many different places, and technology just makes that possible to where we can draw digitally, we can email back and forth ideas and communicate that stuff, which I'm really grateful for, because your books, Mugshot and Skin Police, both were books that I was like, why are there not more issues of this? Because I finished reading Skin Police the other day, and the ending of the fourth issue, I was like, I'm pretty sure this is all of it, but I had to Google and search a couple websites because I was like, why is it why does it have such a huge cliffhanger at the end? I want to figure out what's going to happen next with not to provide too many spoilers, but there's a pretty big cliffhanger at the end of issue 4. So will there be more Skin Police?
Yeah, so there's a second volume of Skin Police coming out in the autumn. So I think probably around August, September, you'll get the first issue of volume two, and yeah, that's going to be another four-issue run. When I was working on it, I always knew it was going to be eight issues. I just wasn't totally sure how Oni were going to decide to chop it up. There was different talks about having it just come out as eight in one go, or doing it in two sets of four. So I kind of wrote it in a way where the first four and the second four, they work kind of as their own things. But like you say, there's a big cliffhanger at the end as kind of a to be continued moment on the end of four, which was very specifically designed to hopefully make people excited to grab the second volume when that comes out. But it definitely it works. It's always written as a complete story, but I was aware that there was a good chance that there was going to be a gap between issues four and five. So I wanted to come up with something big to grab people on that final page.
Yeah, it definitely grabbed me, which maybe jumping the gun a little bit, but for people that don't know about Skin Police, it's a futuristic kind of almost like Blade Runner kind of situation where people can create a clone of themselves, but that clone doesn't know they're a clone, and they can pop or go crazy at a certain point in time in their life. And people create these clones because there's not everyone has the ability to have like a child essentially.
Yeah, there's been
In
a
the future.
fertility pandemic, so it's been super difficult for people to conceive children for a long time,
Mm.
which sent people to like a black market cloning kind of underground criminal element. So yeah, you could get your. I guess it's kind of like it's like adoption, kind of, except you can use your own genetic material to do it. But so then it would be, I guess, up to the parents to tell their children if they wanted to, the same as if you've adopted a child, I guess, and you kind of make that decision when they're a bit older, like, oh, are you going to tell them they're adopted or not? Except here, you'd have to tell them that they're a legal clone, which is complicated further by them learning later on after the big boom for black market cloning that 75% of these clone people are going to, like you say, pop, which sends them homicidal, and they kind of they get, I guess it's like their body gets pumped full of all these chemicals that control like depression and paranoianess and things like that, and they kind of skyrocket. So they're both kind of extra strong, extra crazy, and extra freaked out for us an amount of time when they pop, and they're super dangerous.
Yeah, and it was crazy reading this book because there were just unique ways that people were popping or going crazy, and I thought, oh, it's going to be maybe the same so people can kind of realize what's happening in that moment and try and stop it. But the way you wrote it, there's literally no way you can know if someone one is a clone, or as you say in the book, a dupe, which I thought was such a clever way of making a different thing than clones, because clones
Mm.
kind of overused. So I was like, dupe, that's a really unique way of kind of calling people a duplicate or another term for it. So what was your inspiration kind of behind, getting the creating the name dupe first off, because I thought that was so clever, and it kept coming back to me as I was reading the book. But what was your inspiration for behind creating the Skimply story?
Definitely something like Blade Runner would have been an inspiration. I kind of looked at it as like with the way that The Walking Dead takes zombies and was like, well, what would happen? We often see a zombie film where you get 2 hours and it's like, okay, there's a load of zombies and the people manage to fight them off and they escape, but they're escaping into a world of more zombies. So the story would continue. So The Walking Dead was that idea of taking a world of zombies and just continuing the story. And this, I guess, was looking at that in a world like a Blade Runner type situation where you've got these clones, these duplicates of replicants in Blade Runner, and if there was like tens of thousands of them and they were all over and you didn't know who they were, what would that look like? So kind of extrapolating on the base concept of Blade Runner and bringing in some other sci-fi stories that I liked a lot, and then also working in, like I mentioned, about the how would, like, I'm not a science guy. Like I passed science at school, but I'm not a scientist. I don't know all of the details, but I wanted to have some kind of things that you could base a little bit in science. So I mean, like, I remember a friend of mine who had depression telling me that one day they just woke up and it was like a switch had clicked in their head and they felt awful. And it was like a chemical imbalance situation as opposed to something really bad had happened in their life to make them feel like that. So that those kind of concepts, I get sleep paralysis, which is where my like brain wakes up before my body does. So I'm like paralyzed, but my eyes have opened and I can see whatever's in front of me, but I can't move. And when that happens to you, we've got like this lizard brain left over, where from when we before society, when we would have all been living in caves and trees and things like that, where you could be at genuine in danger regularly, and this bit of your brain kind of alerts you to like, this is a dangerous situation, wake you up. And what my brain does when I have this sleep paralysis is it creates something called the visit, that they call the visitor, in my room. So I'll feel like there's a bad presence, like a person who's got bad intentions, that it's kind of trying to wake my body up, but panicking me at the same time. So that was a little bit of how I brought in some of this with the things that the dupes see when they pop. Is a little bit like the brain's going crazy and it's scared and it wants you to protect yourself. And so to do that, it's making them see these awful visions like we see at the beginning of issue 1. where someone pops on an airplane and they think they're on like a riverboat to Hades kind of situation with all these horrible dead withered people and demons all around. And so that kind of idea came a bit from what I've gone through with sleep paralysis and how complicated our bodies are when they're pumping all these different hormones around, and if they get a bit if the wiring goes wrong inside of us, and what our brains could do, I guess. And then it kind of built a story from there that brings in a lot of the classic stuff from fascist governments and the idea of like people, they're afraid, like there are some warning signs that you could be a dupe, like that get listed in the books. And but even if you go online to search like, oh, what are the signs of becoming a dupe, that can get you pinged on the government watch list, and suddenly you've got a group of skin police agents coming through your door, and they're not necessarily the most gentle, caring people. It's they see the dupes as very much just a problem to be gotten rid of. As we mentioned in one of the issues, though, there's been laws passed within the, it's in a united Europe in the future. So it's all Europe has come together as like a huge country basically, and a little bit like how America has states. Now Europe has become just like a group of states all connected under one government, and they've passed laws that basically means that dupes have less rights than like dogs would within
Mhm.
the United Europe. So yeah, getting even being suspected of being a dupe is a pretty dangerous thing in this world. So that creates a lot of paranoia, and I thought that was quite interesting to create a world where people have these problems, but you'd be almost too afraid to seek help for how you may be treated.
Yeah, I mean, first off, uh, so sorry you have sleep paralysis because that sounds terrifying. And when I'm reading Skin Police, I'm putting myself in the shoes of the main character more so than I am the dupes. But now seeing like, oh, this is the inspiration behind what it looks like or what it may feel like when you pop. Like your experience just provided a lot more context to what those scenes actually mean and how those people will feel. So I'll probably be going back and like looking at that a little bit more through that filter because it kind of just seems more, it's more intense and more uh a little bit more personal now that I know like the inspiration behind that, because those, especially the popping scene that happens, I think in issue 3 in the van, that,
Mm-hmm.
we don't see what really happens, but you see when they open the door and it's like, "Oh, wow, that was really intense," and that probably would have been a, really crazy thing to draw or detail out how everything went down.
Yeah, and definitely as well, and the that I think, yeah, that's issue 2 where they're smuggling some potential dupes and people that have already popped across into a more dupe friendly, trying to get them out of the United States of Europe, the United Europe region, to somewhere that's a little bit more dupe friendly, where people might try and treat these people or help them rather than just wipe them out. And you get to see, yeah, so people who've popped and gone completely psychotic, and then people who've popped but they haven't gone psychotic and they're just terrified, and then people who are just all trapped in this van all together, and yeah, trying to show that there's definitely different versions of what this can look like. It's not just black and white. You pop, you completely lose your mind, and you're like a kind of you become a murderer immediately.
Yeah. When Skimbley's was the second book of yours that I picked up. The first one that really got me interested in your work was Mugshots. And I've got to say, in 2024, that was probably my favorite book that I read almost the entire year. And I think there was like 1 or 2 months, maybe there was like a delay or my shop just didn't get the book for some reason. But I remember going and being like, guys, like this is the best book that's out right now. Why are you guys not reading it or like featuring it up here on your counter? Because one, the artwork is very unique, and the style and the color choice that went with it is a great way, I think, of telling the story and illustrating different aspects of it. And two, each issue is so long, not like in a bad way, but it just felt like there was more pages in each issue to really bring each person that's reading it further into the story. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind choosing like each page is only like black, white, and one color. If you could tell us a little bit about like what made you lean more towards that, and what it kind of overall inspired the story of Mugshots, because as like a it's like a I don't want to say detective, but it's like a crime based book that could take place in everyday life. And I don't think we see a lot of stuff like that in modern comics. Like there's always some sort of fantasy element or sci-fi or futuristic thing. But that was one thing I really liked about Mugshots was like this could have been something that actually happened or a TV show easily. And it felt very easy to slip into reading it because it was like, oh, this could have actually happened.
Yeah, well, first, thank you for the kind words about the book. We're really proud of what we did with that one. So the artist, my co-creator on that series is Chris Matthews, who's one of my best friends. We went to school together, so it's really cool that we get to work together on comics now. And Chris is the one who, well, I guess taking your questions in order, it was every 2 months that it came out, so
Mm.
that was just a choice that Mad Cave made. I think they were maybe a bit nervous because they're a newer. Well, they've been around for a while, but they're newer to the more creator-owned space of comics. And like you said, they're longer, so every issue was 36 pages, and they were maybe a bit nervous about a slightly more expensive, longer book coming out like every month. I don't really know when a 20-page DC book is $4.99 now. I'm not sure how much people would be bothered about paying $1 more to get 36 pages. So probably maybe those fears were a bit unfounded, in my opinion. But yeah, so it was definitely coming out slower. And I mean, we've had a lot of problems with comic distribution recently. So I wouldn't be surprised if towards the end, if there were also some distribution problems. It definitely is a book that I get a lot of. I've had great things said to me, like really nice compliments from other comic creators. We've got a graphic that when I'm marketing the book that I post up that's got like Tom Taylor and Matthew Rosenberg and Mark Russell, all like with their positive reviews on the book. But yeah, definitely maybe as well because Mad Cave are a bit newer, a bit smaller. It probably didn't catch like all of comic shops' attention. And when you work in comics, like although obviously we need people to buy the comics as customers, what you actually first need is comic shops to buy the comics to have them in the shop to sell. So really, you're as publishers, they're selling to the comic shop more so than the customers almost. And that like obviously it's great if people go and pre-order the comics. Like that's the most important thing you can do as a comic book buyer if you kind of care about a series and want it to keep going, is to let your comic shop, hold a copy for me and I'll be in to buy it every month that it comes out. But yeah, as well, getting comic shops to take the risk on smaller titles to put them on the shelves and just take the risk that they're going to lose money, because if they don't sell, they've no recourse on that. So that can be a little bit tough, and it's probably why it isn't a book that could maybe it probably didn't pick up a load of readers just by people finding it in the shops because the
Mm.
issues probably just weren't there. But hopefully now that it's out in the full collected edition where you can get the whole story in one go, it'll pick up a new audience, which would be really great. But yeah, in terms of the decisions on the visuals, like Chris made those choices. Like Chris wanted to do it in a single color, and then what I did was I came up with a way of using that single color approach so that it's in blue and orange. So like you say, you get white, black, and one other color, and that'll either be blue or orange. And most of it's blue, but I wanted to use the orange as almost like music, like tense music in a film. So when something bad or violent is about to happen, the book jumps to orange. So then if you turn the page and suddenly you've moved to orange, that it builds a little bit of anticipation and tension in the reader was the thinking behind that. And then in terms of inspiration, I mean, I've always loved crime books, or I read a lot of crime novels. I watch a lot of crime movies. I grew up loving things like Goodfellas and The Godfather. I do have some of this in my past growing up with my father was actually involved in this kind of world when I was a kid. He ended up in prison for a little while whilst I was a teenager and things. So there's definitely quite a lot of the story. Nothing from the story is real. It's all apart from a few things from the news that I picked up. But in terms of the interactions between characters, the dialogue, the way they speak to each other, the type of people they are, that's very much taken from a lot of the people that I came across as a kid, kind of that were friends with my dad and my. I kind of realized after I'd written it that like there's the protagonist who is John Bannon, who is searching for his niece who's been kidnapped, and they think it's something to do with one of the main crime families within the city that the story's based on. And then there's Harry Woods, who is the head of the main crime family within Brighton where the story's set, who also has a history with John where they had a big falling out, which caused John to have to flee Brighton for fear of his life from Harry, essentially. And I realized after having written it that when Harry speaks, that's very much like the worst of my dad. And when John speaks, that's like the more fun, nice version of him. So I think I kind of processed my father through the two different characters. So you've got him when he's pissed off and angry and swearing. Sorry, I don't know if we're swearing on this. And then you've got John, who still you wouldn't want to completely trust him, but he's a bit more fun and a bit more caring and a bit more of a nicer guy that you might want to spend some time with. So yeah, there's a lot that I think when people talk about the book, they talk about how it feels quite authentic, and yeah, that comes from the fact that I do know these kind of people. And so I have a kind of an ear for how they speak and can quite easily drop into writing that kind of dialogue.
Yeah, it felt very much like not based on a true story, but it kind of had that kind of vibe of like this could have actually happened. And the color aspect, I loved it when I would turn a page and see, oh, we're now going to yellow. It's gonna get more intense or orange. And was there any particular reason why you guys chose those two colors? I feel like blue looked really good on all the characters that were used. And like I feel like John's color very much felt just blue. Like if he was a person, he'd wear just a ton of blue. But was there any particular reason you guys chose those two colors before like the cooler comms and the intense action scenes?
I feel like Chris probably chose the blue just because it looks good. Was probably the original reason for that. But then definitely the orange was because it feels like a bit more of a fiery, dramatic color. So then I think that worked quite well that we had the calmer moments in the calmer blue, and then we would move to the orange. So yeah, I think those tracked pretty well with the drama of the story.
Yeah, and I know Mugshots like it's wrapped up. The story ended in the I think it was the sixth issue, maybe the seventh.
It's four issues,
It's
but
only
they're all yeah, they're all like more than an issue and a half, so it's about
yeah.
140 something pages. I actually was a bit naughty and went a bit long on the final issue, so I think the final issue was 39 pages. So yeah, I think it's quite. Oh, maybe it's like yeah, 100 and do my maths quickly. It's close to 160 pages, the whole story.
Wow.
I think.
Well, definitely I'm glad you went a little bit over because that last issue, there are certain scenes in it that when the final confrontation is happening between John and Harry and John's niece that I still think about every now and then. So thank you for going over,
Oh, that's great.
giving the that time and attention to the story to tell it the way that you want it to be told. And
Yeah, that's definitely some, especially when I'm working with Chris because of our friendship. That's something that we can do a little bit more than. So Daniel Gette is the name of the artist I work with on Skin Police, who's absolutely incredible. But because of just the way that comics set up, like I really have to stick to the 22-page issues, which in itself is a really, I think it can help as well. And I've gone back in and been like, oh, I need to change this, but I'm going to have to cut out some pages here. So it does mean that I think Skin Police, the issues are really tight and very kind of muscular in terms of it really hits you one page after another. So that's definitely a great benefit to having some restraints on you, but it's also nice when you need those few extra pages. And I know that Chris will complain a little bit, but then also get on with it and draw the pages in the end. So we're often having those moments where I send him a script and he looks through and he's like, "Hey, wait a minute, there's extra pages in this one." But yeah, no, that final issue definitely gets pretty intense, and I knew it was good when I got a message from Chris about how angry he was about what happens to one particular character in that final issue. So yeah, if your artist is fully committed and feeling the emotion of the story, then I think you're normally in a good place.
Yeah, and I have to say shout out to Chris because the art style that Mugshots is drawn in, it's not, I don't want to say it's not too complex. Like between Skin Police and Mugshots, like there's so much detail in the world that Skin Police takes in. And Mugshots, there's details for sure, but it's not like an overwhelming amount of details to where I feel like I need to study everything on the page because I feel like I might miss something. It's in the real world, there's a big focus on the characters, I'd say more so than certain aspects of like a sci-fi environment would have. And so it makes it easier, I think, to get lost in the story, but two, those 36 pages, like you said, like I thought this was like a 6 or 7 issue thing because there's so many pages in one book, it doesn't feel like it is that long of a book. And you're totally fine with reading an extra 10 pages because you're flipping through it, engaging in the story, enjoying the art and the backgrounds that they have, but it's not like, oh, I have to pause and like sit and study everything because I might miss something. But really, it's like, no, I need to really read what people are saying to make sure I'm not missing out on a clue or a hint at what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is what I love about comics and about art in general. You've got Daniel Gette, who's very much from the Mobius, Frank Quietly, Jeff Darrow kind of school of really fully rendered, beautiful environments with all this detail, and someone's face always has like a million lines on it showing all the cracks of age and scars, and obviously like he puts so much effort into every page. And then Chris's work is also a lot of effort in every page. I wouldn't want to, I'm
For
sure
sure.
he'd kick off if he heard me downplaying the amount of time he has to spend to do it. But it's more emotional, it's more about the characters, kind of the way they hold themselves. Like, it was interesting speaking to Chris recently, where we're doing a new project at the moment for Comixology, and he was talking to me about what makes like a difficult page for him, because I would often think about it, if you draw like a crowd, if you write in a crowd scene or a big action scene for an artist or something that's going to require like a lot of background detail. But for Chris, what takes him the longest is if it's a scene with a lot of people talking, but they kind of need to, he's really focused on getting the body language right. So
Mhm.
he'll spend an awful lot of time just trying to get that body language right, that facial expression right. And that's actually the stuff that takes him longer. Like in the new book we're doing is a horror book. And in one of the issues, it opens with a big splash page of this kind of over the top horrific image. But he was like, I drew that in like 2 hours because it was just that it didn't have that, it didn't demand from him what a page with maybe 6 panels, but every panel has 2 or 3 characters in who are all trying to put across different emotions and bouncing off of each other and reacting. And he's like, yeah, trying to plan out how I'm going to frame all of that, and doing, he shoots a lot of just, even though like it's very his work is very cartoony. He's like a cartoonist. It's more from the Alex Toth kind of school, Darwin Cook, Chris Samney, but Chris will still shoot a lot of photo reference just to try and get the positioning and stuff right. So even though you wouldn't know that from reading it, because it doesn't look photo, he's not going for photorealism. He spends an awful lot of time so that you can kind of feel the emotions that the characters are feeling as they speak and things like that.
Yeah, and I've got to say, Chris, I think definitely nailed that because the scenes that I think of the most now that you've talked about a little bit like the body language and how he's trying to translate on the page, there's a couple of scenes I can think of like when Harry's working out,
Mm.
or when Harry and his son are having a conversation in the kitchen about making their crime business be a little bit more legitimate. Like those scenes, while the words are important, like I think how those two characters are talking as like a father and son, and the body language of like really showcases like the intention they have behind their words. Like a son that's like, hey, I want to do more in the business or take it over and be legit. And a father who's like, nah, like you're not going to take anything away from me. Like this is how it's going to be and how it's always going to be. Is very much translated, I think, through that body language. And it's one that body language is, I think, what makes some of those scenes um, really powerful and really help people connect to it. And again, like not to downplay any of Chris's contributions to Mugshots. I really like his art style that he's using in Mugshots. Like it's one of the things that drew me to the book because it kind of reminded me of like I know you listed a couple of artists just now, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, this is like a Archer slash Powerpuff Girl kind of like style book. And the color really drew me into with how are we telling such a cool story with just the style of art and the color? It just seemed like a winning combination in my mind. So I was like, why is my comic book shop not featuring this? This is such an easy thing to it draws your eye to it on the wall because it's the only thing that's got a solid color and everything else is so busy. And that's probably why I just picked it up. I just saw it on the wall and I thought, oh, that looks really cool. And
Yeah,
your
I
story.
definitely think it. Oh, sorry. And I
No,
was just going
no.
to say, yeah, it definitely stands out Chris's art as something completely different to what pretty much any other book is doing. And I know from from anecdotally speaking to shops that pretty much it sold out across the board in the shops that it was in. So definitely, if the shops had it in, then people were seeing it and picking it up. So that was really gratifying. And it's a comics is complicated in the way that all the ordering system works. Like if you like I know shops in the UK that got it and sold out and wanted to get more, but it can take like 2 or 3 months to get restock in, especially if you're in the UK and getting it over from America. So that's where it can be a bit complicated. But yeah, definitely hopefully now that with the trade out, people will get the chance to pick it up if they missed it. But it's definitely when I do a convention, it sells out straight away just because I think it just stands out on the table and it's something people can see from across the room and it grabs people's attention because Chris's art is it's simple but it's really striking.
Yeah. And so the trade's out for mugshots. What else do you got coming going on? I know you mentioned you're doing a project with Comixology, which is super great. I love Comixology, and I feel like they really let creators tell the story they want to tell. So you've got that coming up. And is there anything else going on? Maybe a sequel to Mugshots or something else like that that we could expect in the future?
So the trade of Skin Police is coming out in August, just ahead of the second volume. So for anyone who missed Skin Police Volume One in issues, you can order the trade, the collected edition now with your shop, or get it out of all the usual online places. And that will be just in time for the second set of 4 issues to start coming out. So yeah, so the rest of the year, there'll be a lot of Skin Police on the way. Me and Chris has done the first 3 issues of the Comixology book that we're doing. There's been nothing announced yet about what it's actually about. So me telling you it's horror, I think, is probably the most that anyone knows currently. As those guys, it's been really good working with Comixology. Actually, they seem pretty on top of marketing, and they're kind of coming up with a plan for how they announce it. Like we were part of a big announcement at New York Comic Con where they literally just announced like 40 names of people who were doing their Comixology books for the following year. So it's known that me and Chris are doing a book there, but yeah, you'll have to wait to see what the actual book's going to be. But I think that's going to be really cool when that comes out. And it's in a similar kind of style visually to Mugshots, but a very different story. But yeah, I think Mugshots fans will enjoy that one. I'm writing a licensed property for Dark Horse at the moment, but that also hasn't been announced. But that's my first time doing like a work for hire, working in a pre-existing world. So that should be really cool. I have a couple of other series that came out previously that you can get in collected editions. Weird Work with Shaky Kane, which came out from Image Comics, which is a bit like a Futurama world, but with an LA Confidential crime story. So all the characters are kind of alien and bizarre, but it's quite a hard noir murder mystery within the world. So it's like a cool juxtaposition between like strange like crime bosses who are big like giant frog people and things like that, but then it being actually quite serious in terms of the actual story itself. And me and Shaky also did a book called The Man from Maybe at Only Press, which is a bit of a Good, the Bad, and the Ugly Indiana Jones style adventure story, a little bit like Fallout in a dystopian world that's a little bit Western feeling, with the Man from Maybe being a kind of a man with no name type cowboy character who's teams up with a young girl to try and save the world from destruction from a megalomaniacal tech billionaire, which was before that became something that we actually might be dealing with in the real world. So that's interesting. Yeah, so those are both available as well. And apart from that, I do have a bunch of pitches that I'm talking to different publishers about, but yeah, nothing that I can announce. So Skin Police coming in the second half of the year, and then keeping an eye out for mine and Chris Matthews' Comixology book is the main thing at the moment.
Nice. And where can people find you to keep up with some of these updates or to keep up with some of the news of some of the announcements that might be coming?
So I have a newsletter on Substack called Subtle Sledgehammer. So I think if you search for Subtle Sledgehammer on Substack and sign up to that, that's probably the best place to keep up with what I'm doing. I do weekly or bi-weekly videos where I just run through everything that I've done in the week to give people a bit of an insight into all of the stuff you have to do as a comic book writer apart from actually writing. There's so much there's marketing and chasing editors, chasing publishers, and all these, and booking hotels for conventions and trying to get the best price to make it financially viable to travel to different places to appear at conventions. So yeah, that's probably the best place. But I'm ampersand 1988 on Instagram, and I'm on Blue Sky as Jordan Thomas as well.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to see what comes next for you and Chris at Comixology. And I'm excited to hear what your Dark Horse project is going to be when it's announced. And of course, for Skin Police volume, the trade to come out, and for the next set of issues to come out later this year in August, which we'll put some links below to where you can pick up all of Jordan's work. And Jordan, thank you again so much for your time, for coming on, talking to us about Skin Police, Mugshots, and all the other great works that you've done. And with that, bada boom.
Ooh, brilliant. Bada boom.
Thank you for listening to the Badaboom podcast. Keep the conversation going on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Get in the comments on our YouTube channel and let us know what you'd like to hear next. And please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen.